At 6:30 in the evening, on the 31st of May, 1916, Vice Admiral Reinhard Scheer stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the mist part before him. What emerged from the haze was not the broken remnants of British battlecruisers his fleet had been chasing for the past 2 hours. It was the entire British Grand Fleet. 24 dreadnought battleships stretched across the horizon, their massive turrets already turning. German officers stared in disbelief. They had not known the Grand Fleet was even at sea. Within seconds, the horizon erupted in flame. The trap that Germany had set for Britain had snapped shut on Germany instead. For 20 years, two empires had spent fortunes building the most powerful warships the world had ever seen. Billions of marks and pounds poured into steel and guns and turbines. Entire economies bent toward the construction of these floating fortresses. And now, in the gray waters off Denmark's Jutland Peninsula, those two fleets had finally met. The largest naval battle in history was underway. Before it ended, 14 British ships and 11 German ships would lie at the bottom of the North Sea. Nearly 9,000 men would be dead, and both sides would claim victory. But the story of Jutland did not begin in the mist and smoke of that May evening. It began 2 decades earlier, in the shipyards of Britain and Germany, where a new kind of warship was taking shape. In 1897, Kaiser Wilhelm II appointed Admiral Alfred von Tirpitz as Secretary of State of the German Imperial Naval Office. Tirpitz arrived with a vision. Germany, he believed, needed a fleet powerful enough to challenge British naval supremacy. Not to defeat Britain outright, but to make the cost of confrontation so high that Britain would think twice before opposing German interests. He called it the risk theory. Build a fleet dangerous enough, and Britain would be forced to seek accommodation rather than war. The German Navy laws of 1898 and 1900 authorized the construction of a modern battle fleet. Shipyards expanded, steel production increased. A nation that had traditionally looked to its army now turned its gaze toward the sea. Britain watched with growing alarm. For a century, the Royal Navy had guaranteed British security and protected the trade routes that fed an empire spanning a quarter of the globe. The two-power standard, maintained since 1889, held that the Royal Navy must be larger than the next two navies combined. Germany's building program threatened to upend that balance. Then, in 1906, everything changed. HMS Dreadnought entered service that December. She was unlike any warship ever built, where previous battleships carried a mixed armament of large and small guns. Dreadnought mounted 10 12-inch guns in 5 turrets. Where previous battleships relied on reciprocating engines, Dreadnought used steam turbines that drove her at 21 knots. She could outrun anything she could not outfight and outfight anything she could not outrun. Dreadnought rendered every other battleship in the world obsolete overnight, including Britain's own. The naval balance reset to zero. The race began anew. Germany seized the opportunity. If all previous battleships were now second class, then Britain's enormous lead meant nothing. Both nations would start fresh. Tirpitz accelerated construction. Britain responded in kind. By 1909, the British public was demanding more ships with the rallying cry, "We want 8 and we won't wait." They got them. By 1914, Britain possessed 28 dreadnought battleships to Germany's 16. The ratio was not what Tirpitz had hoped for, but the High Seas Fleet remained the second most powerful navy on Earth. Then came the war. When the guns of August 1914 began firing across Europe, both fleets mobilized for the decisive battle that generations of naval theorists had predicted. The new dreadnoughts would meet in a cataclysmic engagement that would settle mastery of the seas in a single afternoon, just as Nelson had settled it at Trafalgar a century before. That battle never came. Instead, the British adopted a strategy of distant blockade. The Grand Fleet based itself at Scapa Flow in the Orkney Islands, far to the north. From there, it controlled access to the North Sea. German merchant ships could not reach the Atlantic. Neutral ships carrying supplies to Germany could be stopped and searched. Slowly, methodically, the blockade began to strangle the German economy. Imports fell to 55% of pre-war levels. Food grew scarce. The war industry struggled for raw materials. The high seas fleet was trapped. It could not force a battle against a superior enemy. It could not break the blockade by direct action. It sat in port while the nation it was built to protect slowly starved. For 2 years, this deadlock held. Occasional sorties ended in skirmishes, but never the decisive engagement both sides had anticipated. The British were content to wait. Time was on their side. The Germans grew desperate. Admiral Reinhard Scheer took command of the High Seas Fleet in January 1916. Unlike his cautious predecessor, Scheer believed in offensive action. The fleet, he argued, had been used too defensively. German ships and German crews were the equal of anything the British could field. What was needed was a plan to even the odds. Scheer devised a trap. His battle cruisers under Vice Admiral Franz von Hipper would raid the English coast, drawing out the British battle cruiser fleet under Vice Admiral David Beatty. As Beatty pursued, he would be lured south into the waiting guns of the entire high seas fleet. The British would be caught between Hipper ahead and Scheer behind. Outnumbered and outmaneuvered, Beatty's squadron would be destroyed before the Grand Fleet could intervene. It was a sound plan. It had only one flaw. The British knew it was coming. In a cramped office in the old Admiralty building in London, a secret unit known as Room 40 had been reading German naval communications since the war's first months. 3 separate German codebooks had fallen into British hands through capture and recovery. Room 40's codebreakers, a collection of academics, linguists, and classicists, had decrypted over 15,000 German messages by 1916. On the 30th of May, they intercepted Scheer's orders. The High Seas Fleet was preparing to sail. Admiral John Jellicoe, commander of the Grand Fleet, received the warning that evening. By 10:30 that night, the Grand Fleet was leaving Scapa Flow. 151 ships carrying 60,000 men steamed south through the darkness. Jellicoe intended to intercept not just Hipper's battle cruisers, but the entire High Seas Fleet. The hunters had become the hunted, but neither side knew it yet. At 1 in the morning on the 31st of May, Hipper's 5 battle cruisers slipped out of the Jade Estuary. Scheer followed 2 hours later with the main fleet, 50 miles behind. They sailed north, expecting to find Beatty's battle cruisers and destroy them. Instead, they were sailing toward the greatest concentration of naval firepower ever assembled. Jellicoe had divided his forces. Beatty's battlecruiser fleet, reinforced by 4 fast battleships of the 5th Battle Squadron, would sweep ahead and make contact with the enemy. Once Beatty found the Germans, he would lead them north toward Jellicoe's main body. The Grand Fleet would then deploy across the German line of retreat, trapping Scheer between Beatty to the south and Jellicoe to the north. 2 vast fleets converged through the North Sea haze, each believing it held the advantage, each ignorant of the other's true strength. Winston Churchill would later write that Jellicoe was the only man on either side who could lose the war in an afternoon. The security of Britain, the survival of the blockade, the entire Allied position at sea rested on the Grand Fleet's continued supremacy. A catastrophic defeat would not merely cost ships, it would cost the war. As dawn broke over the North Sea on the 31st of May, neither Jellicoe nor Scheer knew that by nightfall, the gray waters around them would hold the wreckage of 25 warships and the bodies of nearly 9,000 men. The Battle of Jutland was about to begin. The first shots came shortly before 4 in the afternoon. British light cruisers screening ahead of Beatty's battle cruisers had spotted German destroyers to the east. Both sides sent forces to investigate. Within minutes, the scouting forces had found each other, and the reports crackling back to the flagships confirmed what both Beatty and Hipper had hoped for. The enemy was here. Beatty commanded 6 battle cruisers, the most powerful ships of their kind afloat: Lion, Princess Royal, Queen Mary, Tiger, New Zealand, and Indefatigable. Each mounted 8 guns of 13.5-inch caliber or larger. Each could make 25 knots or better. They were designed to hunt down enemy cruisers and destroy them before they could escape. They were fast, heavily armed, and lightly armored. Speed was their protection. Hipper had 5 battle cruisers of his own: Lutzel, Derflinger, Seydlitz, Moltke, and Von der Tann. German design philosophy differed from British. Where the British sacrificed armor for speed, the Germans balanced the two more carefully. Their ships were slightly slower but significantly better protected. It was a difference that would matter enormously in the hours ahead. Beatty turned his squadron southeast to cut off the German retreat. Hipper turned and ran south, drawing the British after him. The chase was exactly what Scheer had planned. Every mile Beatty pursued brought him closer to the guns of the High Seas Fleet waiting over the horizon. At 3:48 in the afternoon, both lines opened fire simultaneously. The range was 18,500 yards, more than 10 miles. At that distance, shells took nearly 30 seconds to reach their targets. Gun crews fired, waited, watched for splashes, corrected their aim, and fired again. German gunnery proved superior from the start. The light favored them. British ships were silhouetted against the bright western sky, while the German vessels merged into the hazy eastern horizon. Hipper's gunners found the range quickly. Beatty struggled. Lion took hits within minutes. Princess Royal was struck. The German shells punched through armor and exploded inside the ships, starting fires and killing crewmen. But the British battlecruisers were built to absorb punishment. They kept firing, kept chasing, kept closing the range. Then, at 4 disaster struck. SMS Von der Tann had been dueling with HMS Indefatigable at the rear of the British line. A salvo of 11-inch shells struck the British battlecruiser near the aft turret. What happened next took less than 30 seconds. A flash of fire traveled down into the ship's magazine, where hundreds of cordite propellant charges waited to feed the guns. The cordite exploded. Indefatigable broke apart. Her back shattered. Her hull tore open. She rolled and sank so quickly that men on nearby ships barely had time to register what had happened. Of her crew of over 1,000 men, 2 survived. They were pulled from the water by a German torpedo boat. The loss was shocking, but Beatty pressed on. The chase continued south. Both sides scored hits. Both sides took damage. The range closed to 14,000 yards, then 12,000. At 4 o'clock, a German shell found HMS Lion's Q turret amidships. The shell penetrated the turret roof, which was only 3.5 inches thick, and exploded inside. The blast killed or wounded nearly everyone in the turret. Flames roared through the confined space. Charges of cordite propellant, stacked in the working chamber for faster loading, caught fire. The flash began traveling down toward the magazine below, where enough explosives waited to destroy the entire ship. Major Francis Harvey of the Royal Marines lay dying on the turret floor. Both his legs had been blown off by the explosion. Shrapnel had torn through his body. He had minutes to live at most. But Harvey understood what was about to happen. He had seen the flash, seen the fire spreading downward. He knew that if it reached the magazine, Lion would die the same death as Indefatigable. Harvey dragged himself to the voice tube that connected the turret to the magazine handling room below. With the last of his strength, he gave the order to close the magazine doors and flood the compartment. Then he collapsed. The sailors below followed his command. They sealed the doors. They opened the flooding valves. Seawater rushed into the magazine, drowning the charges before the fire could reach them. The explosion never came. Major Harvey died of his wounds. His orders saved HMS Lion and more than 1,000 men. He was awarded the Victoria Cross posthumously. The citation noted his high sense of duty in circumstances of extraordinary danger. But citations could not capture what he had done. Legless, eviscerated, with seconds to live, he had thought not of himself but of his ship and his shipmates. And he had saved them. Lion survived. But the battle was far from over. At 4:26, 24 minutes after Indefatigable's destruction, it happened again. HMS Queen Mary was one of the finest ships in the Royal Navy. She had been trading salvos with SMS Derflinger and SMS Seydlitz when a shell struck near her forward turrets. The sequence that followed was grimly familiar. Flash, fire, explosion. Queen Mary's forward magazines detonated. The blast was so powerful that it lifted the forward section of the ship bodily out of the water. A second explosion followed almost immediately as the aft magazines went up. The ship broke in half. Her stern rose vertically into the air, propellers still turning, before sliding beneath the surface. From the first hit to final disappearance took 90 seconds. Of Queen Mary's crew of nearly 1,300 men, 20 survived. A signalman on HMS Tiger, sailing directly behind Queen Mary, watched the destruction. "The ship seemed to roll slowly towards us," he later wrote. Her mast and funnels came down together. Then there was a tremendous explosion that seemed to split her in two. On the bridge of HMS Lion, Vice Admiral Beatty watched his second battlecruiser die in less than half an hour. He turned to his flag captain, Alfred Chatfield, and spoke the words that would become the battle's most famous epitaph. "There seems to be something wrong with our bloody ships today." Then, without pausing, he gave his next order: "Turn 2 points to port." The chase continued. The fault was not in the ship's design, though many would later claim it was. The fault was in how the ships were operated. British battlecruisers carried their propellant charges in silk bags that were vulnerable to flash. German ships stored theirs in machined brass cases that were far more resistant. Worse, British crews had developed the habit of stacking extra charges in the handling rooms and passageways to increase their rate of fire. Safety doors that should have been kept closed were propped open or removed entirely to speed the flow of ammunition. The Germans had learned better. At the Battle of Doggerbank in January 1915, SMS Seydlitz had nearly been destroyed when a shell hit ignited a turret fire. Only desperate flooding had saved her. The Germans had studied the near miss carefully. They had improved their ammunition handling procedures, installed better flash protection, and trained their crews to keep safety doors closed. The British had not. The price of that failure was 3,309 men dead and 3 ships, killed in a combined total of less than 3 minutes of explosions. But the worst news was still to come. At 4:33, light cruisers scouting ahead of the German battlecruisers sent an urgent signal. Commodore William Goodenough aboard HMS Southampton had pressed forward despite heavy fire to identify the shapes emerging from the southern haze. What he saw made him reach immediately for the wireless. "Urgent, priority, have sighted enemy battle fleet bearing approximately southeast, course of enemy north." It was not just Hipper's battlecruisers out there, it was the entire high seas fleet, 16 dreadnought battleships, 6 pre-dreadnoughts. Destroyers and cruisers beyond counting, and they were heading straight for Beatty's battered squadron. The trap had sprung, but it had sprung on the wrong victim. Beatty had been chasing Hipper south for nearly an hour, believing himself the hunter. Now he discovered he was the prey. Somewhere to the north, Jellicoe and the Grand Fleet were still steaming toward the rendezvous point, still hours away. Beatty was alone, outnumbered, with 2 battlecruisers already gone, and the most powerful fleet in the German Navy bearing down on him. At 4:40, Beatty ordered his ships to reverse course. The chase south was over. The run to the north had begun. Now it was Beatty's turn to be the bait. For the next 90 minutes, Beatty ran north with the German fleet in pursuit. His remaining battlecruisers had taken severe punishment. Lion was down by the bow from flooding. Tiger and Princess Royal had been hit repeatedly, but they could still make 24 knots, and they stayed ahead of Shear's dreadnoughts. Behind them, the 4 fast battleships of the 5th Battle Squadron under Rear Admiral Hugh Evan Thomas fought a brutal rearguard action, their 15-inch guns hammering at the leading German ships while absorbing hit after hit in return. HMS Warspite took 13 heavy shells, HMS Malaya took 7, but Queen Elizabeth-class battleships were built to take punishment, and they gave as good as they received. SMS Großer Kurfürst and SMS Markgraf both suffered serious damage from their fire. The German pursuit slowed, but did not stop. Scheer believed he was winning. His trap had worked. The British battlecruisers were fleeing north, and his fleet was driving them before it. What he did not know was that every mile he advanced brought him closer to destruction. Jellicoe had been steaming south since dawn with the main body of the Grand Fleet. 24 dreadnought battleships in 6 divisions, arranged in cruising columns for ease of maneuvering. Accompanying them were 3 battlecruiser squadrons, 8 armored cruisers, 12 light cruisers, and 51 destroyers. It was the most powerful naval force ever assembled. But Jellicoe faced a problem. His fleet was deployed for cruising, not for battle. To fight, he needed to form his ships into a single line ahead, with each battleship following the one in front, able to fire broadsides without obstruction. Deploying from 6 columns into one line was a complex maneuver that took time. And he had to choose which direction to deploy, port or starboard, before he knew exactly where the enemy was. The reports reaching Jellicoe were confused and contradictory. Beatty's signals had been sporadic, and the positions they gave did not match what Jellicoe's own navigation suggested. Smoke and haze limited visibility to perhaps 6 miles. Jellicoe knew the Germans were coming. He did not know precisely where they were or in what strength. At 6:14 in the evening, with the rumble of gunfire audible to the south, Jellicoe made his decision. He ordered deployment to port, to the east. It was the correct choice. It placed his fleet between the Germans and their home bases. It gave his gunners the advantage of the light, and it would allow him to cross the German T, the classic naval maneuver in which one fleet's line crosses in front of the enemy's column, allowing every ship to fire full broadsides, while the enemy can only reply with forward guns. The Grand Fleet began to deploy. 24 battleships turned in sequence, forming a line of steel nearly 8 miles long. At 6:20, the battlecruiser squadrons made contact. Rear Admiral Horace Hood's 3rd Battlecruiser Squadron, racing south to support Beatty, encountered Hipper's battered ships emerging from the haze. Hood's flagship Invincible opened fire on the German cruiser Wiesbaden, crippling her. Then, the German battlecruisers appeared. The range closed rapidly. Invincible and Derfflinger exchanged salvos at less than 9,000 yards. At 6:34, a shell from Derfflinger struck Invincible's Q turret amidships. The sequence that had already claimed Indefatigable and Queen Mary repeated itself. Flash, fire, magazine. Invincible exploded. The detonation broke the ship in half. The 2 sections sank in opposite directions, but the water where she died was shallow enough that they did not disappear entirely. Invincible's bow and stern remained protruding above the surface at steep angles, like monuments to the dead. Passing British ships sailed between them, their crews staring in horror at the wreckage. Of Invincible's crew of over 1,000 men, 6 survived. Rear Admiral Hood was not among them. His body was never found. 3 British battlecruisers had now been destroyed in virtually identical fashion. Over 3,300 men had died in magazine explosions. Something was catastrophically wrong with the way these ships fought, and the battle was not yet half over. But Jellicoe had no time to mourn. At 6:30, the Grand Fleet completed its deployment. And at that moment, Scheer's leading ships emerged from the mist and smoke directly into its path. The German officers on the bridges of König, Großer Kurfürst, and Markgraf saw a sight that stopped their hearts. They had been chasing Beatty's battlecruisers, expecting to destroy an inferior force. Instead, they found themselves facing a wall of battleships stretching across the entire horizon. Gun turrets, as far as the eye could see, already turning toward them. They had not known the Grand Fleet was at sea. Jellicoe had crossed the T. The British opened fire. 24 dreadnoughts, each carrying 8 to 10 heavy guns, poured shells into the German van. The leading German ships could reply only with their forward turrets. It was exactly the situation every naval officer dreamed of and every naval officer feared. SMS Koenig took 7 hits within minutes. SMS Markgraf and Grosser Kurfürst were struck repeatedly. The German line was taking murderous punishment, and Scheer knew that if he held course, his fleet would be destroyed. At 6:35, Scheer gave an order that had never before been executed in battle. Gefechtskehrt-Wendung, battle, turn away. Every ship in the German fleet would turn 180 degrees simultaneously, reversing course and fleeing into the mist from which they had just emerged. It was an extraordinarily difficult maneuver. Each ship had to turn at almost exactly the same moment. A single error could cause collisions that would cripple multiple vessels. But the High Seas Fleet had practiced it endlessly, and now that practice paid off. Within 4 minutes, the entire German battle line had reversed course and disappeared into the smoke and haze. Jellicoe stared into the mist. The enemy had simply vanished. The British continued south, searching for the Germans. Visibility remained poor. Then, at 6:55, Scheer did something inexplicable. He turned his fleet around again and headed back toward the British. Historians have debated his reasons ever since. Perhaps he hoped to cross behind the British line and escape to the east. Perhaps he wanted to rescue the crippled Wiesbaden, still drifting between the fleets. Perhaps he simply misjudged where Jellicoe's ships were. Whatever his reasoning, the result was catastrophic. At 7:13, the German fleet emerged from the mist for the second time and found itself in an even worse position than before. The British line now overlapped the German van almost completely. Every gun on the Grand Fleet could bear. Scheer had blundered into the same trap twice. This time, Scheer knew he could not simply turn away again. The British would anticipate the maneuver, would follow, would maintain contact. He needed time. He needed a distraction. He ordered the death ride. At 7:13, Scheer signaled Hipper's battlecruisers to charge directly at the British fleet, close the enemy, and ram. Ships denoted are to attack without regard to consequences. The German battlecruisers, already battered from hours of fighting, turned and headed straight toward the greatest concentration of naval firepower in history. It was a suicide mission, and everyone knew it. The battlecruisers' job was not to defeat the British, but to die slowly enough for the rest of the fleet to escape. Hipper, whose flagship Lützow was too badly damaged to continue, transferred to a destroyer to lead the attack. His 4 remaining battlecruisers drove toward the British line at full speed. The British guns found them almost immediately. Der Flinger took 14 hits in the charge. Seydlitz took more. Von der Tann's main turrets had all been disabled, but she sailed on regardless, drawing fire that might otherwise have fallen on the fleeing battleships. The German ships absorbed punishment that should have sunk them 3 times over. At 7:17, Scheer added a masked destroyer torpedo attack to cover his retreat. German destroyers raced toward the British line and launched 21 torpedoes. At almost the same moment, Scheer ordered his 3rd Gefechtskehrt-Wendung of the day. The battleships turned away into the mist once more. Jellicoe saw the torpedoes coming. He faced a choice: turn toward the Germans, comb through the torpedo tracks, and maintain contact with the enemy, or turn away, open the range, and let the torpedoes run harmlessly past. He turned away. Every torpedo missed. But the maneuver cost 17 crucial minutes. By the time the Grand Fleet reversed course and resumed the chase, the Germans had vanished again. The mist swallowed them. The sun was setting, and the chance for a decisive victory was slipping away. At 8:19, the sun dropped below the horizon. The day action was over. Jellicoe positioned his fleet between the Germans and their home ports. In the morning, he would find them and finish what he had started. But morning was still 10 hours away, and in the darkness, everything would change. Darkness fell over the North Sea like a shroud. Jellicoe faced a problem that had no good solution. The German fleet was somewhere to his west, trying to reach home. There were 4 possible routes Scheer could take. The northernmost passage around the Skagerrak, the central route through the minefields, the southern channel past Horn's Reef, or the direct route through the swept channels closer to the German coast. Jellicoe could not cover all 4. He chose to position his fleet across the most likely path, steering south through the night at 17 knots. His destroyers formed a screen 5 miles astern, watching for any German attempt to cross behind the Grand Fleet. In the morning, with daylight to see and maneuver, he would locate the enemy and resume the battle. It was a reasonable plan. It should have worked. Scheer had already made his decision. He would take the shortest route home, directly through the Horn's Reef passage. This meant crossing behind the British fleet in darkness, passing through or around the destroyer screen, and reaching the safety of German minefields before dawn. It was risky. A night engagement with the Grand Fleet could be catastrophic. But staying at sea until morning, with his ships damaged and his ammunition depleted, guaranteed destruction. He turned his fleet southeast and headed for the Gap. In London, Room 40 was still reading German signals. At 9:06 in the evening, they intercepted Scheer's request for airship reconnaissance over Horn's Reef at first light. The message made his intentions unmistakable. He was heading for Horn's Reef. He would pass behind the British fleet during the night. The Admiralty did not forward this message to Jellicoe. At 10:43, another intercept gave Scheer's precise position and course. At 11, another. At 11:37, another still. Throughout the night, Room 40 tracked the German fleet's progress with remarkable accuracy. Any one of these messages would have told Jellicoe exactly where to find the enemy. None of them reached him. The junior officer on duty at the Admiralty that night did not understand the significance of what he was reading. He filed the intercepts without forwarding them. The greatest intelligence advantage in naval history was squandered by bureaucratic routine. Jellicoe sailed through the darkness, searching for an enemy whose position was known to men sitting in offices a few hundred miles away. Meanwhile, the German fleet crept closer to the British destroyer screen. The first clashes came before midnight. At 11:20, the 4th Destroyer Flotilla, under Captain Charles Wintour, encountered German cruisers and battleships looming out of the darkness. The engagement began at point-blank range. HMS Tipperary, leading the flotilla, was caught in the glare of German searchlights and hit by a storm of shells. Her bridge was destroyed. Her engine rooms flooded. She drifted away burning, her crew abandoning ship as she sank. In the chaos that followed, destroyers on both sides fired at any shape they could see. Recognition signals flashed in the darkness, sometimes answered, sometimes ignored. Ships that had been enemies for hours suddenly found themselves alongside vessels they could not identify. Some held fire, fearing to hit friendly ships. Others fired at everything. HMS Spitfire found herself alongside the German battleship SMS Nassau after a confused series of maneuvers. The two ships were so close that Nassau's main guns could not depress far enough to hit the destroyer. Nassau turned to ram. The ships collided at high speed, their hulls grinding together with a shriek of tearing metal. Nassau's forward gun turret fired directly over Spitfire's deck. The muzzle was so close that the blast alone stripped away the destroyer's bridge, funnels, and superstructure. Men were killed by the shockwave without ever being touched by shell fragments. But Spitfire survived. She pulled away from the collision with a 20-foot section of Nassau's hull plating embedded in her own side. She limped home with this grim trophy still attached. Other ships were less fortunate. HMS Ardent stumbled into the German line and was destroyed by gunfire from multiple battleships. HMS Fortune met the same fate moments later. HMS Sparrowhawk collided with HMS Broke in the confusion, then was hit by HMS Contest as well. 3 British destroyers tangled together in the darkness, unable to maneuver, easy targets for any German ship that found them. Sparrowhawk had to be abandoned and sunk by her own side. But the most terrible fate of the night belonged to HMS Black Prince. Black Prince was an armored cruiser that had become separated from her squadron during the evening action. For hours, she had been searching for friendly ships in the darkness. Her captain did not know exactly where he was. He did not know where the Germans were. He knew only that the fleet was somewhere nearby, and he was trying to find it. Shortly after midnight, Black Prince finally found other ships. She approached them, probably believing they were British. They were not. Black Prince had blundered directly into the center of the German battle line. She passed between the battleships SMS Thuringen and SMS Ostfriesland at a range of barely 1,000 yards. The German searchlights snapped on, illuminating the cruiser in their harsh white glare. For a moment, Black Prince's crew must have seen exactly where they were, surrounded by enemy dreadnoughts with nowhere to run. The Germans opened fire. Thuringen, Ostfriesland, Friedrich der Grosse, and Nassau poured shells into Black Prince at point-blank range. The cruiser was hit dozens of times within seconds. She exploded, broke apart, and sank. The action lasted less than 4 minutes. Of Black Prince's crew of 857 men, there were no survivors. Not one. They died without ever knowing how they had wandered into the enemy fleet. The German fleet pushed on. At 2 in the morning, British destroyers made another attempt to stop the German advance. The 12th Flotilla launched a torpedo attack against the rear of the German line. Most of the torpedoes missed or were evaded. But one found its target. SMS Pommern was an old pre-dreadnought battleship, obsolete by the standards of modern naval warfare, but still carrying a crew of more than 800 men. The British torpedoes struck her amidships. The explosion breached her hull and reached her magazines. Pommern vanished in a pillar of fire that could be seen for miles. The blast was so violent that nothing recognizable remained. She sank in seconds, taking every man aboard with her. 844 dead, no survivors. She was the only capital ship on either side to be sunk by torpedo attack, and she died with all hands. By 3 in the morning, the German fleet had broken through. The British destroyer screen, savaged and scattered by hours of confused fighting, could not stop them. Scheer's ships crossed behind the Grand Fleet and reached the swept channels leading to the Horn's Reef Passage. At 4:13, a British submarine spotted the German fleet entering the defensive minefields near the German coast. The submarine's report was relayed to Jellicoe. For the first time, he knew with certainty where the enemy had gone. They had escaped. Dawn broke over an empty sea. Jellicoe swept the area where the night fighting had occurred and found only wreckage. Oil slicks. Floating debris. Bodies. The detritus of a battle fought in darkness and confusion. The Grand Fleet searched until noon, but there was nothing left to find. The Germans had reached the safety of their harbors. Scheer's gamble had paid off. His fleet had escaped destruction by threading the needle between the British battle line and the minefields, passing through the destroyer screen in a series of brutal close-range actions that cost both sides dearly. Jellicoe turned his fleet north and headed for Scapa Flow. The Battle of Jutland was over. Behind him, the North Sea kept its dead. 14 British ships and 11 German ships lay on the bottom. 6,094 British sailors and 2,551 German sailors would never return home. Among them were the crews of Indefatigable, Queen Mary, and Invincible, killed in magazine explosions that lasted mere seconds. Among them were the men of Black Prince and Pommern, destroyed in the darkness without warning. Among them were the destroyer crews who fought at point-blank range against battleships, knowing they could not win, but fighting anyway. The guns fell silent. The smoke cleared, and both sides began to count the cost. Both sides claimed victory. Germany had sunk more ships and killed more men. The Kaiser declared that the magic of Trafalgar had been broken. Streets were named after the battle. Medals were struck. But Scheer knew the truth. On the 4th of July, he submitted his report to the Kaiser. Even the most favorable outcome of a fleet action, he wrote, will not force England to make peace. He recommended unrestricted submarine warfare as Germany's only hope. The High Seas Fleet never again seriously challenged the Grand Fleet. The blockade continued. Germany starved. In February 1917, the submarines were unleashed. In April, America entered the war. In October 1918, the fleet was ordered to sea for a final death ride. The sailors mutinied. The Kaiser fell. The war ended. On the 21st of November 1918, the High Seas Fleet surrendered to Beatty's Grand Fleet. 7 months later, the German crews scuttled their own ships at Scapa Flow. 52 vessels sank, including most of those that had fought at Jutland. Some lie there still,